Another edition of Behind the Lines presented by TheLines.com and BetMGM Sportsbook. I'm Eli Hershkovich, joined as always by lead trading manager for BetMGM, Christian Cipollini, previewing the divisional round after the Monday night debacle for Sam Darnold, I would say, tied an NFL playoff record by taking 9 sacks in that blowout loss to the Rams. Good outcome for the book. Bad outcome for Sam Darnold, Christian.
Yeah, that I was talking about it today, and I think that was one of our best single game outcomes that we've had. Certainly would be top five, top 10 for sure. Yeah, I mean, as you touched on, no one really gave the Rams much credit or much of a chance. We had about 85-90% of the bets that came in were all on the Vikings, and not only that, on top of it, we had a ton of last leg parlays going into it, all relying on the Vikings as well. So that crushed a lot of people, I would imagine.
Yeah, good outcome, though, for anybody that took an underdog around the key number of a field goal or at 3 specifically or below it. 3-0 against the spread over the weekend, including the Rams. And they took their foot off the gas pedal seemingly in the second half. And we'll touch on that when we handicap the Rams-Eagles matchup and get some insight from Christian on what's going on behind the counter early in the week. But let's kick it off with the first divisional matchup on Saturday afternoon, or early Saturday evening, depending on where you're watching this game. Chiefs and Texans, Kansas City favored to win the AFC, and they're 8-point favorites against Houston in a rematch from Week 16, total of 42. Going back to that Week 16 matchup, Kansas City covering. It was one of its 11 one-score victories on the season. And in case you're looking for conspiracy theories, Christian, this week, Clay Martin is one of the officials for Chiefs Texans, and Kansas City is 6-0 in the playoffs with Clay Martin as one of the referees. So get ready for those cryptic tweets at you or at BetMGM this coming weekend.
Yeah, okay. We get them most weeks, but I'm sure then this one will come too. But yeah, an interesting one. We've touched on this a lot that Kansas City doesn't do a great job of covering these high spread numbers. They're already sitting here at -8. It was closer than that the last time these two teams played not that long ago, and the Texans looked actually very good last week. That was one of our better outcomes of the week. We had a ton of Chargers action the whole way, so no one gave them a lot of credit there. And so far into this week, no one's giving them much credit so far. We have taken much more Chiefs bets at this point. I'll be interested to see if that does start to change, just off the fact that the Chiefs just not doing a great job of covering touchdown plus spreads in recent memory.
Curious, too, on your perspective on the total and the handle for that market, because it opened a little bit higher. And to me, the under is a little intriguing. You go back to Texans Chargers, as you mentioned. Houston had a negative EPA on both dropbacks and design runs. So it's not like their offense was that proficient or efficient. And Kansas City's defense is completely healthy, including Chris Jones, who has been out since week 15. And then on the flip side, Houston's defense held Justin Herbert to the lowest QBR in his career, not only in the playoffs, but in the regular season. You're going to get wind gusts potentially up to 25 miles per hour. Now, obviously, Patrick Mahomes can negate some of that, whether you're looking at Houston's defensive efficiency or potentially the weather, but the total has dipped a bit. So is that a product of sharp bets, or what are you seeing behind the count?
Yeah, it's a little bit of product of sharp bets, but even on to that point, a lot of things that you just mentioned all are kind of factoring in the cold weather. You have a dome team going to a cold weather team, and then that favorite, who's 8-point favorites, hasn't scored more than 30 points a game in any game this season. So all of those things kind of combined are leading to it. And we market wise, books probably opened up a little bit too high, clearly, and all of those factors combined led us to drop it down to where we are now.
Looking ahead to Saturday night, Detroit favored to win the NFC, and they're up, in a sense, to 9.5-point favorites. We'll get into the line movement here in a second, but minus 9.5 against Washington, total of 55.5. Since Washington's bye week, the Commanders have won 5 straight games, including that thrilling win over the Bucs on Sunday night. All 5 coming in the final 10 seconds with that double doink, or the doink, not the double doink, from Eagles Bears what, 5 years or so back, but just a single doink capping that streak off. And you look at big favorites of around a touchdown since 2013, they've gone around 18-3 or 18-3 exactly straight up. Ben Johnson revenge factor game, however you want to look at it from what happened in the offseason where Ben Johnson nearly interviewed for the Commanders' head coaching job. But I see this more as maybe an alt spread game for the Lions and not a great result for the book. How is the handle playing out so far, and what are you seeing from bettors?
Yeah, so we got back-to-back games we're touching on here with very big spreads. Like I've said this whole year on this podcast, the Lions have been one of our worst teams. That is continuing into this week. A ton of Lions bets already off the bat. This total being insanely high too is going to be a factor in this. I would actually say more for the book. The main thing that we'll probably want is that this total goes under and that we don't get this high scoring game that everyone is projecting. If we get a lower scoring game, that will probably be better for us, if anything, than the spread. Just knowing how many same game parlays and how many over bets we've already taken, and we know that's going to continue into Sunday or into Saturday.
Yeah, and going back to week 18, it was Sam Darnold, but we saw a similarly high total get trounced essentially in the first half. And over the course of the full game, with the game total going under in Vikings and Lions, that concluded the week 18 and the regular season in general in the NFL. And you look at Jaden Daniels, only two quarterbacks have produced road playoff wins with 0 punts and 0 turnovers. It was Daniels against the Bucks and Peyton Manning going back to 2003 against the Chiefs. So can Daniels replicate that against a well-rested Lions team coming off of the bye? Can it happen twice in a row? At least those numbers with no punts, I would say no. And maybe in that sense, the total is a little bit inflated. Also, Washington's fourth down luck correlating with their success in the waning seconds of their last 5 wins, maybe kind of in between the lines saying that this total, again, is inflated. But time will tell, not only from the market, but also behind the counter. So let's shift over to Sunday afternoon, Christian. Philadelphia, 6-point home favorite against the Rams. LA coming off of that aforementioned blowout win over Minnesota on Monday night, total of 43.5. Another rematch going back to week 12, Philadelphia blowing out LA on Sunday Night Football, dominating the Rams defense on the ground in the second half. And then you go back to the wild card round, Philadelphia winning the turnover battle 4-zip against the Packers. The Rams, similarly, split that difference, won the turnover battle 2-0 against Minnesota, including a defensive touchdown from Jared Verse in the first half. But like I touched on from the get-go, their offense kind of playing it more methodically in the second half. The Eagles' offense, conversely, especially through the air, really struggled against Green Bay. That a little bit concerning to me with Jalen Hurts, even though, like I hit on, the Eagles did have success offensively in their first matchup against the Rams. So how do you see this one playing out, and what are some of the results so far against the spread bets and with the total?
Yeah, so from yesterday, obviously that Rams defense looked very, very good. I don't expect that to be the exact same case. I don't think they're going to end up with 9 sacks in this one. We're going to see a lot of that previous game coming to light in the bets that we're going to take. We've already taken a bunch of Eagles bets. We always take more bets on the favorites in general, so we expect that to continue. I don't imagine we're going to get many Rams bets throughout. And then the combo of these 3 games that we're all touching on, at least 6-point spreads or more, adding in the national championship game on Monday, which is also an 8.5-point spread. We're going to need, book-wise, one of these dogs to win. Would be probably make it a great week, but we'll definitely need a couple of them to cover in order for us to come out on top for this one, because it's going to be a lot of the public taking all of these favorites all the way through. So we know what we'll need for sure.
As an Eagles fan, will you be in attendance?
I hope so. I haven't fully decided yet, but I was in attendance for the last one. Yeah, the offense didn't look great, but that is the thing that at least I like about this Eagles team is that they can beat you a ton of different ways. They just showed it by winning completely defensively. Saquon can go off at any minute, and you still have A.J. Brown out there who's a huge threat. So a lot of different ways to be why I would like the Eagles in this one. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see what book AJ Brown is reading on the sidelines this weekend. But as you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up with BetMGM yet, use promo code THELINES, that's the lines one word, and you will get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code THELINES. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You'll then receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure to use bonus code THELINES when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire within 7 days. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code THELINES and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. Over to the finale, the marquee matchup in the divisional round, widely known as the best weekend in the NFL playoffs, because you seemingly get the 8 best teams left and really across the NFL. And I think that's the case this season, especially. The Ravens, 1-point favorites at Buffalo. This line teeter-tottering a bit, and you can explain that here in a moment, but total of 51.5. And you go back to week 4, where Baltimore blitzed the then undefeated Bills, 35-10. Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry combining for 253 yards on the ground. Snowy conditions in Orchard Park this coming weekend, so maybe Baltimore's rushing attack set up for another big game against this Buffalo defense. But how has the market shifted here? Because while Detroit and Washington saw some line movement, still below the key number, still below the point spread of 10, in this case, the favorite is flipped.
Yeah, this was very interesting in my opinion, only because I didn't really expect it to go like this, the way that it's going. But the Bills open up as 1.5-point favorites, and that has pretty much flipped the complete opposite way to the point where right now the Rams are 1-point favorites, but we've gone back and forth a bit between 1.5 and 1. So it's been all over from a pick'em to now at this point Ravens being the favorite. I do think that is a bit surprising with the Bills being at home, and as you mentioned, the conditions could be snowy. Not that it should affect those teams too much. They're both cold weather teams as it is. But yeah, so far we have gotten more Ravens action. A lot of that early was sharper action. And kind of to your point where you touched on a key number, when we're floating around these numbers at this point, all of them become kind of key until we keep going up from there. So I guess there was the sharp side so far likes the Ravens. For this one, for the book perspective, I do think we're going to end up pretty split. We might end up 55-60% on the Ravens, but this will be another key one for us to go under because this will be another one paired up with that Commanders-Lions game that everybody's just going to be taking. Any over props, touchdown scores, everything you can think of.
Yeah, it's interesting handicapping this game, and I get it from the market perspective just because power ratings not only behind the counter, but when you look at the sharper handicappers across betting X and anywhere else, most have the Ravens power rated higher than Buffalo. And you look at their last 5 wins, coming against Pittsburgh twice, Cleveland, Houston, and the Giants. So I guess 6 total, 2 against Pittsburgh. How much of that inflates their defensive rating? Granted, you look at the back half of the season, not just over that stretch, ever since they moved Kyle Hamilton to safety, back to safety, Baltimore's defense has taken that major leap, and they did their fair share of positive things against Josh Allen in week 2, but much of that started, or week 4, I should say, but much of that really got going because Baltimore exploited Buffalo on the ground in the opening first quarter. Not to say that Lamar Jackson can't negate a negative game script, but we have seen Jackson struggle in the playoffs, and that's going to be the narrative going into this game. No?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And it'll go for both sides. Neither have gone to the Super Bowl yet, so whoever doesn't is definitely going to hear it from the media the whole way through, even if it does end up just being a close game that really was out of either one of their hands. But yeah, your point to the rushing attack, I mean, I've seen overs so far on pretty much every selection, but Lamar overs and Derrick Henry overs in the rushing totals. I did see a big one on Lamar rushing attempts over 8.5, so we saw a ton of action already on all those overs. So they do, I guess, anticipate a decent running game from this one.
If you can look it up quickly here, just on that note, we have seen Buffalo trend more towards Allen running the football in the playoffs. Is the same case for Allen, at least among early week prop bettors, that rushing attempts could be on the higher end for the Bills quarterback?
Yeah, so we took overs on Josh Allen over 8.5 rushing attempts as well, just not to the degree that we've already seen on Lamar. So way more on Lamar's over 8.5, to not as much on Josh Allen's. I can't really comment on why one over the other. You would think they're probably pretty similar, but I guess there's some defensive reasonings for sharp bettors betting those ones the way that they were.
Yeah, and you go back to the end of the regular season, Allen closing around minus 400 to win NFL MVP. There were some voters that came out, or at least a poll, something of that nature, that dictated Allen maybe behind Jackson. So this is going to be a game full of storylines, not just because you have two quarterbacks that haven't made the Super Bowl, but also the MVP conversation that is yet to be announced. So going back to, if you want to take the highest total of the week with Washington and Detroit or anywhere else on the board, you touched on some player props that stick out so far in Ravens Bills. Any other player props of interest? Again, a couple days into betting these divisional games, but whether it's Washington, Detroit, or any other matchups that have maybe taken considerable action relative to a 2 or 3 day stretch.
Yeah, I'll say the one that stood out to me just because I didn't expect to see it was Dwami Brown over his receptions, over his yards. Both got bet up from their opening number, and then we still were taking overs on it from there. So I guess, he obviously scored the first touchdown in the last game. I guess bettors are looking at him as the number 2 in this offense against a defense that we know is pretty banged up. So, like I said, there was overs in pretty much any stat category in that game you could pick on, but I was shocked by the amount of Dwami Browns. His was, up there on par with St. Brown and other players. So that one was at least the one that I thought was interesting.
I kind of like that with Detroit's secondary banged up and Terry and Arnold. You would think he's going to play, but dealing with a foot injury and no Carlton Davis. So, I may have to tail that one, depending on where the number goes over the course of the week. But let's take a look at some of your favorite bets for divisional weekend, Christian. What's on your card over the first couple days?
Yeah, so I'm just going to go with one here because I don't want to be the fun police and take an under in one of these Washington Lions or Ravens Bills game because I don't want to be the one rooting against what should be amazing games and high scoring games in those. But I am going to go with an under, but it is in the Rams Eagles game. This is a decently low total, but I do feel like this is one that's going to trend downward. The Rams defense has been much better over the last month, 2 months. And then the Eagles defense obviously looked fantastic last week. Expect that to kind of continue. And I always think that there's a third kind of factor that plays in a lot with this Eagles team is if they do get up and get up early, they tend to try to run the entire clock down throughout that fourth quarter. So you kind of saw that in the fact that they weren't really running much of a passing attack a lot of times in the second half of that game, which could trend this one to the under. So I think there's a lot of different ways this one could go under. So that's my best bet of the week.
On the note of Eagles Rams, have you guys seen any, especially after Monday night, not necessarily correlating with any sort of liability or big liability, but any interest in Rams to win the Super Bowl or any teams that underdogs that advance from the wild card round? I know we touched on Washington and their big odds entering the season last week, and around I think 150 to 1 to win the Super Bowl going into week 1. So just from the standpoint that they had a big number, not creating a big liability, but still a dent for BetMGM if Washington was to even get to the big game potentially. But any takers in a team like the Commanders or the Rams when it comes to Super Bowl odds after the wild card round?
Yeah, we noticed some people taking them early on in the last game. After they scored the first touchdown, we still keep the futures market up. So some people got a pretty good price on them because they were pushed pretty far out. But still, the event as a whole, the futures market as a whole, they're actually still our least bet on team of the teams remaining. We do have them third worst outside of the Commanders and Texans are the two that we do have least likely. They're the next one on that outside sitting in. And of those three teams, those are the three teams that we're pretty much saying don't really have much of a shot of winning the Super Bowl. It's those five remaining teams that do. And the handle between if I take all three of those teams combined, Rams, Commanders, Texans, it doesn't touch any one of the next five. So yeah, everyone's been piling on those big five teams we have left.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll get some more Chiefs and Lions bats ahead of their divisional matchups on Saturday. But staying on the note of the Super Bowl, I was curious looking at MVP odds in that market because you can bet Super Bowl MVP now 3 weeks ahead of the big game, right around there. Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Jared Goff, Josh Allen atop the odds board, all of them priced at plus 600 or better. Any interest, or I would assume, among the majority of the handle so far, you're getting action on one of those four quarterbacks, but any long shots being maybe picked on, a couple bets here, a few bets there for Super Bowl MVP?
Yeah, you touched on those four quarterbacks are most bet on the highest odds, most likely at this point to do so. Outside of that, really big long shots, the number one that we've seen, the one that we've taken the most action on is, funny enough, Aiden Hutchinson. Just off that angle that if he does end up coming back, there's probably a few different storylines that could help out, especially if he has a couple sack game coming back from injury all the way into the Super Bowl. So we saw some of that. A lot of times the longer shots will be a defensive player, so we've seen a little bit on Chris Jones if the Chiefs get there. The one that I think that it's not much of a long shot that probably has a pretty good chance would be Saquon Barkley, just on the fact that if the Eagles continue to play that the way they were playing, and Jalen Hurts in the Super Bowl doesn't have a great throwing game, I feel like he's just as likely in an Eagles Super Bowl win to get that MVP as Jalen Hurts would be. So his odds are a little bit better. Similar story with Derrick Henry, although Lamar is just so much more electric that one would be harder. But obviously, he could end up with a 152 touchdown game in a Super Bowl should he get there. Yeah.
Chris Jones, 250 to 1, Aiden Hutchinson, 100 to 1. And then you mentioned Barkley, maybe possessing some value at 12 to 1. No bias there. I'm assuming with the Eagles pick, but he is Christian Cipollini, lead trading manager over at BetMGM Sportsbook. Always appreciate the insight, especially ahead of a massive and the best, honestly, playoff weekend and NFL weekend of the season for me.
Yeah. So we're excited for this next one. This one should be great, especially that Ravens Bills game. So we anticipate that to be our most bet on game of the season so far. So we're definitely excited for this weekend. Yeah, hopefully everything works out.
And hopefully all of your bets for our viewers and listeners go well this coming weekend. Remember to check out all of our content, NFL betting previews, over at thelines.com. You can also sign up with BetMGM Sportsbook for your $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses using promo code THELINES. That's the lines, one word. And when you sign up with BetMGM, you can take part in the $1 Million Playoff Challenge. More details on the BetMGM app when you sign up with promo code THELINES. So for Christian and for myself, Eli Hershkovich, thanks for watching and listening to this edition of Behind the Lines presented by BetMGM and thelines.com. So long, everybody, and good luck with your NFL Divisional Round bets.